Hey reader, it is time to tackle that pile. So it is the beginning of April, and every 3 months I film a update of my TBR card. And last time that I filmed this card was definitely looking a lot less busy. So yeah, we made some decisions apparently in the past few months. I mean, I think mainly I've just not been keeping up with the rate at which stuff has been coming in, especially in the month of February and March. And so we're gonna have to tackle this. In the month of April, I'm planning to read a lot of the cards. I'm hoping to get around to a lot of the cards. The only issue with that is that I want to read them all physically rather than audibly, and so with audiobooks I could get through a lot more of them, but I'm just hoping to make sure that I put enough physical reading time into my month of April. But so yeah, the number on my TBR at the start of April was not that amazing. I think all of them are... actually, this book wasn't there yet. So it was under 30 at the start of April because of that book. But so yes, let's go through them. I'm going to start with the ones that I'm currently reading. So I have The Beheading Game by Rebecca Lehman. And actually, did that one come in when it was already April? Maybe it was still March? I'll have to see. Otherwise I have to remove this one. So this is a retelling of a reimagining of the history of Anne Boleyn, who was beheaded when her husband Henry VIII, the King of England, was no longer interested in having her as his wife. She was pulled through the mud, accused of adultery. She was unable to give him the male heir that he so desperately wanted. And basically his eyes had drifted to somebody else and he was like, yeah, let's accuse her of being a witch and let's decapitate her. This reimagines the stories of Anne Boleyn as she has just been decapitated and she arises with her head still chopped off, and so has to reattach her head and you know, go on a journey to try and seek revenge. I think revenge. I'm not entirely sure whether that is what she is going to be doing, but it is looking at a story of Anne Boleyn after she has passed away. Then I'm also reading, and this one I am more than halfway through, The Ashfire King by Chelsea Abdullah. This is the oldest book on my TBR at the moment, and it is about time that I finish this one because I started this one in February. So yeah, I've been taking my sweet time with it. Mainly I've just been putting other things as a priority, but this is the sequel to The Stardust Thief, and in The Stardust Thief we are following a girl called Luli who is known as the Midnight Merchant. She is very good at tracking down djinn artifacts and in selling them over on the black market. However, her sort of like talents lead her into the eye of the Sultan, who hires her in order to go on a mission together with his son Omar. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I've been waiting a whole long time for the sequel, and so it's a little bit sad that I'm taking so long to get through the sequel because this was definitely one of my most anticipated releases of 2025, and so I'm definitely very happy that I'm finally giving it the attention it deserves and going to be finishing it within the month of April. Then there are two books that I basically like put aside, as in the month of April I am doing a magical readathon, and for that I am choosing a higher calling for which I need to read the top of my TBR, physically speaking. And so these two books I do not want to read this month, and so I have basically strategically placed them somewhere lower in my apartment so that they will never be the top of my TBR. The first one is Euro Trash by Christian Kracht. The reason I don't want to read this one is because I'm going to be buddy reading this with my two friends that I'm going on a trip to London with in August, and so I'm going to be reading it closer to August because, you know, if I read it now I just won't have enough memories about it by the time that August comes around. And, you know, this is a road trip that a middle-aged man goes on with his mother in Switzerland. Don't know more about it. All three of us, like all two of them, found it interesting. I saw the cover and I didn't even read the back until they were both like, yeah, we both have this one, so it would be nice for us to read this one if you also find it interesting. And then I read the back and I was like, sure, I'm interested. Plus it is very short. And then the other book that I have on the side is called called Bitch, What Does It Mean to Be Female? And this is a non-fiction about, yeah, female animals and stuff like that. And so this is one that I'm holding aside for a certain Herkiat prompt. And so let's get to the card. I think typically normally I try to do this like kind of in order from oldest to newest, but that's definitely not happened so far, as you can tell from this video, and that's definitely not going to happen. I am also going to try and keep these more or less in the order that they are on my cards, and actually this one is definitely one that I don't want to get to in the month of April, so maybe as we get further into the month I might have to move it on this card. But this is the Bone Shard War by Andrea Stewart. This is the third book in the Bone Shard Emperor series. And so in order for me to read this one I have to reread the first two. So that's why I don't want this one to come up in the month of April. Because, you know, sure I have the reread prompt as part of my higher calling. But I'm not actually planning to reread this entire series this month. So the Bone Shard Emperor, we are looking at a emperor who basically has this daughter that he's like very cruel to and he kind of neglects. And that's all that I really remember. I mean, that's all that I remember that I can say without it potentially being spoiler filled. So yeah, I think we're gonna leave it at that. I really enjoyed the first one. I don't really have much memories of my experience with the second one to know whether it like lived up to it or not, but I have definitely not like had that push into the third one. So I'm hoping that if I'm gonna be rereading it now, that I'm gonna feel that desire to like devour the series in one go. First up, we have By Blood, by Salt by J.L. Odom. This is the winner of the, what is it called? Spiffbo round of last year. So self-published book off, something like that. Spiffbo. SPF, self-published fantasy book off, something like that. Basically, it's a competition that is run every year in which independent self-published books take on each other. It's basically a competition to find the best book there, and this is the book that won last year. Woo! This is not keeping things in order. I mean, it basically doesn't fully matter where it is, as long as that one stays in the correct position. But so, it is, I actually don't know what this book is about, and this book was the March read-along book of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, so that's why I put it that high on that pile, because I didn't get around to it in March, so I definitely want to get around to it in April. But so, when the enemy of your enemy is your only friend, in the end, you stand alone. Azetla has served the Morrowan army for 13 years. There are 7 left to pay. A pariah and a dead soldier, he is a commander with no rank, a soldier without citizenship, and wears a sword that is unlawful for him to either own or use. He has learned to hold his tongue or risk losing everything. So I'm not going to read the entire blurb of these, but I'll give you a little bit of an inkling. So, top of the TBR. Next up, we have Green and Deadly Things by Jen Lyons. So this is the newly published work by Jen Lyons, came out in the month of March. Another one that I know nothing about. This is the broken binding edition for it. And yeah, I'm not going to read the blurb for all of these, but it says here, all that lives kills, all that dies gives life. I love Jen Lyons. I haven't loved all of her works as much, but you know, there's always a potential for something by her to be as good as her Chorus of Dragons series, and so that's why I'm going to be continuing reading them. Then we have The Book of Fallen Leaves by A.S. Tamaki. Once I saw this cover, I was like, I need to read this book. It's gonna be samurai-inspired fantasy. I don't need to know more than that, and I am very eager to get around to it. Next up we have Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. Cat Shelter Cozy Fantasy. What else do we want? Then we have The Three Graces by Amanda Craig. This is another one of the most recent additions onto my TBR, and I actually don't fully remember, but it has like 3 older women who are on holiday, I believe, or maybe they're like retired in Italy, but in any case, I like the fact of following some older women, and like a holiday destination is always fun to follow. Then we have Claudia Pinheiro. So Claudia Pinheiro is the author of Elena Knows, and this is one of her most known works in Spain, at least. I admit that I don't think I've ever seen the English version of this. So this is Las Viudas de los Jueves, so The Widows of Thursday. And I don't know more about it. I really, really loved Elena No, so I want to try out more of Claudia Piñero's work. Trying it in Spanish might be a mistake, though I do know that I read Elena No's in Spanish and that it definitely worked fine for me. So let's see, hopefully that's the case as well for this. And then we have The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. This is a book about basically the beast that is kind of at the origin of the werewolf story. So this is a beast in France, and so we are looking at two characters. I think it is two male characters who've had some sort of a gay romance in the past, or that's kind of what I glean from the synopsis. And so one of them, it seems like they've had a turbulent past in this region of the France in the past, and so one of them is basically like ruling it or something like that, and the other is now returned to do him a favor and help him out with the new dangers that is threatening their region. So those are sort of like the most likely books for me to pick up within the month of April, because they're the ones on top. But I do actually have other criteria for what top of the TBR means, so you might actually see some other stuff on this TBR card as well. Let's tackle the older ones. So I do still have, oh, come out. Whew, that's heavier than I thought. I do still have Silverthorn by Raymond E. Feist and A Darkness in Setanon. So this is the second and the third book in the Magician trilogy by Raymond E. Feist. I did read the first book of that in January or February, and I've been meaning to continue on, and I think this month is going to be the month in which that happens. Then we have my final Illumicrate book, The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino, which is kind of like, one of them is a secret mage who has like this immense amount of power that nobody actually really knows, and she has an immense amount of power that basically serves as a sort of like reservoir for the knight to make use of, but what the knight doesn't know is that she's like actually a secret princess or something like that. There's something with a secret identity about this book. Do I know fully? Clearly not. And then I have a full series in here. I will only take out the first one for that, and that is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. So this is a epic fantasy that deals with Native American, I think like Inca probably, or Aztec mythology. That's all I really know about it. Broken Binding edition once again. And it's also one that I'm going to be doing in like a full series reading vlog. So this one is not going to be the April one. Alright, some in the back of this card, which is also like almost impossible for me to get to within this month, which is a good thing because the first thing here is Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. We do not want this page count on my April TBR, okay? So this is the fifth book in the Stormlight Archive. This is the currently final book because the Stormlight Archive is basically going to be a 10-book series, but it's going to contain 2 5-book arcs, since this is the 5th book in the first arc. In the Stormlight Archive, we're looking at a plethora of characters who are basically living in this world where there are wars happening between the humans and, oh, what are they called? Yeah, basically some sort of another race that has sort of like carapace on their bodies and stuff like that, and a lot of these characters are drawn to the Shattered Plains as they're known as, due to circumstances. And then I have a book that I actually also don't know anything about, which is, yeah, this is the Dutch edition, so it's Niemand kan terug, Nobody Can Return by Alba de Cespedes, which is a Italian rediscovered classic, I think, or just a modern classic in general. I don't know whether it's like really rediscovered, but I've heard really great things about Alba de Cespedes, so I really should give her work a chance. Alright, some other stuff at the back here, so not likely to make it onto my April TBR, is gonna be Lord of Ruin by K.M. Enright. This is the sequel to Mistress of Lies, which is a sort of vampire book that I actually really enjoyed last year. It was one of the Illumicrate books of then, and so I bought the sequel through Illumicrate as well. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that, but I do feel like I have to reread Mistress of Lies or read a synopsis for it. Like not a synopsis, a recap. Then we have The Imposium, a health resort horror story by Olga Tokarczuk. This is a reimagining of The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. So this is a group of people living in a health resort in the Swiss Alps, I believe, discussing the important stuff of life, discussing philosophy and all those things. And then we have The Raven Scholar by Antonio Hodgson. I've heard really good things about this one. This is a sort of like trials type of book, it seems like, and so I am very much looking forward to giving this one a go, but it is also massive, so I didn't really want to give it much of a chance for the month of April. And then we just have a few left over here. These seem like so much more than 30, but I promise you that they're not. We have The Splinter King by Mike Brooks. This is the sequel to, good question, what is it called? Why does it not say that? The Black Coast, of course. So The Black Coast was a book that I really enjoyed a whole lot, in which we're looking at basically the clash between a sort of like pirating, Viking type of crew and a settlement. And so usually the Vikings basically come to how do you call that, raid the city every season, but now the people of the town are actually trying to establish some sort of a agreement between them and their settlement in order to survive the new political landscape of their world. Then we have another sequel. I have all the sequels on here, right? That is Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. This is a cozy fantasy which we're looking at a knight who basically used to be a paladin to a god. This god has unfortunately passed away. In the process, he and his fellow knights basically went berserk, and he is still feeling like he needs to repent for the actions of that day. And so now he's basically just out there trying to do good. Snake Eater by T. Kingfisher. Gotta be fair, gonna be honest, I don't actually know what this one is about, like so many things on my TBR, but I like T. Kingfisher a lot, and so I'm always happy when I get to pick up one of her books. Child of Wax by Olga Raven. This is the Dutch edition. I really want to read The Employees by Olga Raven, and this is her newly published work. And I basically went a little bit out on a limb because I haven't read The Employees and I just bought her new book. So I don't know whether this is good, whether this is going to live up to the hype surrounding The Employees. But in any case, I'm going to give this one a go. And then the final thing on my TBR is Operation Bounce House by Matt Dinneman, which I have because it is part of the SFF subscription of The Broken Binding. I have not read Dungeon Crawler Carl. I don't know whether I've been interested in it. I do know that a lot of people are saying that this one is not as good as Dungeon Crawler Carl, so if I'm not fully convinced after having read this book, I can potentially still decide that I want to try Dungeon Crawler Carl, but I guess that will kind of depend on my experience with this one, because if this is going to be like a super negative experience, for example, then I might not even give Dungeon Crawler Carl I think I said that correctly, a go. However, I do know that mainly people are saying that like the best way to read that is via audiobook, but only Audible has the audiobooks, so I don't know whether I'll ever go that route for it, but yeah, we'll see. But so yes, we have made it through my TBR. There's a lot on here. As I said, I am definitely hoping to be able to reduce this TBR by quite a fair bit, but it's also the case that the books that are like on the top of my TBR are not the shortest neither, so it's also not ideal in that sense, right? But I'm gonna do my best to try and get through as much as possible. Let's keep it here for now. This can go back on top of that as well. And yeah, wish me luck. Let me know if there's anything on there that you have read that you're like super excited about me giving a go as well. And yeah, I'll get through these books one day. I do have like a 1 year time period that I give myself for all of these, so once they've been on my TBR for a year, then that really is sort of like enough is enough. I need to make sure that I get to them before I've gone through a full year. But with the exception of the Ashfire King, which I'm currently reading, the next book that I need to read is from like July or something like that. So I'm still in the clear for a few months in terms of like not feeling the pressure of finishing the book exactly within that month. But so yeah, hopefully I can kind of clear some of these out as well, because I do prefer a little bit of a shorter TBR, and this is definitely not a reflection of that at the moment. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video and see you guys for a future one. Bye!